It's Emma here from Hands. Thank you for joining us for what is day 26 on the bike. We are on the home stretch now to the end of June, and today we're joined by Peter and also David Campese, who is the ultimate legend when it comes to rugby union. Let me give you a little bit of an intro to David, and then I'm going to hand over to the gentlemen. So David is, of course, a household name in world rugby. Many view him as one of the greatest and most entertaining rugby players to have ever graced the rugby field. Representing Australia for over 15 years and New South Wales for 11, he was the first man to achieve a world record of 64 tries. To add to his credentials, he was the first man in Australian history to play 101 tests for his country and is one out of only a handful of players worldwide to have achieved that. Despite being retired for over 20 years, David's resounding impact on the game is still evident in his controversial yet consistently accurate opinion on the game, which continues to entertain and resonate throughout the international rugby world. And as a massive rugby union fan, I am definitely fangirling today, and I'm so pleased to be on this call. Although I will point out that being a Kiwi, my alliance lives with the All Blacks. But I'm so excited for this chat, so I'm going to hand over to Pete and David now.
Thanks, Em. Thanks, Campo. How about that from one of the New Zealand fans, mate?
Yes, mate. I wonder how much she got paid to say nice things from a Kiwi point of view.
Just my salary. Just my salary.
Great for you to join us, Campo. It's we really appreciate you giving up some time to have a chat with our riding group today. Whereabouts do we find you this morning?
Yeah, I've just been out at Coogee Oval doing a mentoring session. So I've had to rush back here in Sydney traffic. Couldn't get up the lifts. Probably wasn't the nicest to my daughter, but unfortunately, you know, it's a bit of a panic stations, but in Des Moines at the moment. So I don't know if you can probably see, we're just over Des Moines Oval, which is just outside there. It's a beautiful Sydney day.
Yeah, it's a stunning day in Sydney, and good to see that training's back on, and we'll certainly get to that about what you're up to and the clinics and all the rest. I look forward to that. So, as Em said, there's a long list of firsts and achievements that you had. I guess I just wanted to start the chat, Campo, finding out, you know, when was it for you and those close, your parents and so forth, did it become clear that you would play for the Wallabies? And without knowing the time, you know, was it the case at the age of 13, 12, that it was, you were destined, it was just when it would happen?
No, nothing like that at all.
Yeah.
Coming from Queanbeyan, I went to Queanbeyan High, so it's a government school.
Yeah.
Rugby is played really at the private school system. So I played rugby league from 8 to 16, from represent the ACT every year in league. Played a couple of years of Aussie rules, played a lot of cricket, won a golf championship at 15, schoolboys, and then back in 1978, left school, got a job, went over and watched the local Queanbeyan Whites 4th grade team. After the game, I went to the coach and I said, do you guys need a fullback? And that's when I started. So I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was probably fortunate. I had a brother and 2 younger sisters. So my parents weren't really involved like you see parents these days. You know, my parents probably came and saw 2 test matches out of 101. So there was never any from parents to push. I was fortunate that I was probably in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there might have been a bit more going for you than just right place and right time. There might have been some talent there, Campo, that made that happen. Let's move straight into, you make your debut in 1982. And if I've got it right, that was against New Zealand in New Zealand, is that right?
Yes, it was, yeah. 3-test tour of New Zealand, yes.
Tell me the tradition behind the being presented with your jersey, your first Wallabies jersey. What did that mean? And do you recall the moment and who presented it to you?
Yeah, I think it was, we were in Christchurch and it was 11 games tour of New Zealand. Back in those days, you had those long tours. So playing for the Australian 21s about 3 weeks before that, then you're in the main team. Still being only 19, had still no idea what I was doing. Had all these older guys who I'd seen on TV. Mark Ella was captain of the tour. So it was a very, very new environment, a bit intimidated. So what I decided to do was sit on the wing, shut up and listen and learn. Try and get some of the good habits, not the bad habits off the field sort of problems. But yeah, it was my first test, and I think it was Mark Ella who got up and presented my first jersey. So I was very honoured. Mark's obviously a good mate of mine, and I learnt a lot. He was like not a mentor, but he was a guy I looked up to, and I wanted to play like he did. So I was very nervous, but on the other hand, I had no idea who the All Blacks were. Unfortunately, come back from a league background, and I think that really helped because I wasn't intimidated at all.
Yeah, right. And you talk about the Ella boys. Did you play that test with the three Ella boys? Were they playing then?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I remember Mark and Glenn were. Gary was 13. So we had our first training session, and, just been thrown into this. You had Mark Ella, you had Michael Hawker, you had Gary Ella, you had Poitevin, you had, Topo Rodriguez, had all these guys. Anyway, so we are there, and we had a training session, and I was on the wing, and we did the ball came out the back line. Glenn Ella was supposed to chime in the back line, give the ball to me, and I would score in the corner. Anyway, so we do the move, and I get the ball, and Glenn Ella's still at halfway, and Mark says, "Glenn, where are you?" "Oh, no, I'll be there next time." First introduction play for the Wallabies, thinking, "Gee, this is a bit slack," But then you have to go with the flow, sort of thing, So yeah, it was like it was daunting in one way, but it was exciting because we had a lot of young guys. I think 11 Queenslanders pulled out from the year before, so we had a lot of 11 young guys who came through the 21. So we had a generation change, as you could probably say.
Yeah, sure. And that test pans out all right for you. You score a try in your first test.
Yeah, scored a try. If you look back now, I keep on saying I used to have hair once. That's all you can see, just black hair everywhere. But it was against Stu Wilson, who wasn't very impressed with me at all. During the game, he said he went over just to Bernie Fraser, said, "Mate, can you come and mark this guy? I've got no idea what he's doing." And Bernie said, "No, mate, stay over there. Get the forwards to look after him." So he went to the forwards and said, "Mate, we'll just corner this guy and let's just kick the crap out of him." And the forward said, "Mate, well, if you catch him, we'll kick him." So obviously, stories exaggerate over the years. But it was a very memorable first test.
And the second test is much the same. You score another try there. And I guess from the average of tests played and tries scored, it's pretty much you're scoring beyond on an average of beyond every second test. You're coming up with a try.
Yeah, it was back in those days. We were fortunate again that we played a style of rugby that it changed. And even if you look at the modern day play now, the game has changed again. The wingers basically sit out in the wing and wait. So I think luckily I came through the 80s where running rugby was in vogue, the different style of rugby. And being on the end of that back line, and then eventually going to play at Randwick, where my first Bob Dwyer, the coach said, "Mate, before you retire, you've got to come to Randwick and play one game." So I turned up my first game. After 20 minutes, I was on the floor, and the physio came out and said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Mate, can you please tell the guys I don't want to see the ball again." Normally the winger got the ball, but it was just at Randwick played where the winger, mate, you get the ball all the time. It was unbelievable to be involved in rugby where something's going to happen, and coaches allowed you to. I think they call them disruptors now, where you want to be different. You can be different, and you can still play in a team environment. So I was lucky that the coaches and the players around allowed us to do that.
You talked about playing your first test, and I think you used the word intimidated. And that's before you get on the field. And whether All Blacks, were they still doing the haka, or were they doing the haka before the start of a test there?
They were, but the haka back in those days was very different to what it is today. You could see him wasn't really rehearsed. They just got up there and just did it. These days, they've obviously gone, you can see the different hakas they do for the different opponents. So, yeah, look, it was, but again, it was totally new. You know, we were rugby players. I think it's great for the game. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. Even though in 91 World Cup, I actually was kicking the ball around before we played them. And I'm glad we won, because if I didn't, I would have been abused by a lot of people.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like you know, the perceived benefit that comes, either right or wrong, from the strength it gives the All Blacks, and what opposition teams have done in the years and continues today to try to upset that flow, that mindset. And, you know, we go back to, and when I was looking at it, had you retired in 96, and it's for John Eales, that was in playing New Zealand, it was his first test as captain, and where he famously and admittedly regrets turning their back and walking away. Were you part of that test, or had you retired by then, Campese?
Yeah, that was 96. That was at Wellington. And you've got to realise, in those days, we weren't told what we should do. So there was no, we just got out there. Most teams, you get in front of them and you look and you watch. That's what it was. But that game in 96 was at Wellington, and we had Greg Smith as a coach. So he said, today, guys, get out there before the All Blacks come and just do some warm-up drills. And the All Blacks basically waited an extra 15 minutes. So it was cold, it was wet and windy. So we did all these moves. The All Blacks came out, did the haka, and it wasn't a really good day for us. I think it was 46-6. We got absolutely flogged. But that's what we decided. So rightly, I don't think by standing watch the haka would have done any good that day. It was just one of those that, you know, you turn up, you either, you know, you're going to win, or, you know, it's going to be a tough game. So look, you know, I think for John to say that, you know, it's great now in hindsight, but as I said, we were never told what we should do to the haka. It was up to the individuals. There's
a famous test where John Williamson led the crowd in the singing of Waltzing Matilda after the haka, which was something that was seen as, you know, I don't think they appreciated the support that would come from the crowd, but that was quickly shut down again too, wasn't it? Well, not something that was repeated. Yeah, look, I just find it, you know, if you speak to the average spectator, they love the haka. You know, if you think about Tonga do one, Fiji do one, and Samoa do one, but they're okay because the All Blacks are the All Blacks, you know, and they think, oh, it's intimidating and it's not fair. I said, well, look, if you want to do a dance, go and do a dance, and I don't really care. You know, if you think it's going to inspire you to be a better rugby player, well, obviously, you know, you got a few problems. But because the All Blacks have been so dominant, and you know, they've done it, because back in the old days, I think they only used to do it when they were away, and then now they do it every test. So it is, you are asking a lot from these guys, but again, they still perform. You know, and if that inspires them, you know, you've just got to learn how to beat the All Blacks. And what we did in the 80s, we learned how to beat the All Blacks, because I played them 29 times from 82 to 96, and I won 9 times. So, you know, that was actually, that's not a bad record, believe it or not. Some players have never beaten the All Blacks. So, you know, it's about mindset. It's about being the best and wanting to be the best. And they were the best. So we had to find a way to beat them. And we found a way. But what they did in early 90s, late 90s and 2000s, you talk about the Williams song as well, the All Blacks realised what's working for them is not working anymore. So they went and changed their whole structure. Now, you know, they realise we've got to change, but we haven't changed. We are still, I don't know the style we want to play. You know, if you look at every team is a different style. And when we get to the Wallabies, you know, we're 7th in the world at the moment. So something's not working. But will we change? I don't know. So that's the next process. You've got to find out what's going to make us be better or be number 1 in the world. And at the moment, 7th is not great. Yeah. And it's certainly something I wanted to talk to you about was what separates great teams, and when we've got such equal access to information and science and so forth. But I'll come back to that. One of the things I did want to, have you share with us, Campo, well, what are some of the, great traditions that comes with representing your country as a Wallaby, that you look back over a career of 101 tests and you go, you know what, these were the such special things that are only shared by the playing group that, you hold dear to you?
Yeah, well, it's being from I call it from the wrong side of the fence, from the government school system. It was totally new to me. And if you go and watch schoolboy rugby at Kings and all that, when Kings first play, the whole school's there. It's traditional. They've got traditions. So I've come into a system where I didn't really have traditions. But finding out, you represent your country. So off the field, in public, you got to be respectful because people know who you are. If you do something really silly, you do see these days because there's a lot more cameras, but in the amateur era, it was the same. You go overseas. We went overseas in 1984. We were over there for 18 games. We went through England, Scotland, Wales. Every time you go out, you are representing your country. You are an ambassador. So that was a thing that I got onto pretty early. Respect. Even when you go out again, you play, you are very respectful of the opposition, you're respectful of your hosts, and really just having that that love and passion when you sing the national anthem. You get there, you sing it, you're proud, and you realise that you're representing the whole of Australia, not just yourself or your family, but everybody. Every kid wants to be like you. So every time you play, you give your best. Every time you go out, you are polite, So there's a lot more that for us, I suppose, you look at the modern era now where there's a lot more phones. We didn't have phones in the old days. In the dressing room, photos are on some Instagram, they're doing this. We didn't have to do that because we were there as a team. We played for each other. And, it's that will to win. We were brought up in an era where we want to be winners. We didn't up and say, oh, we play in the All Blacks. If we lose today, it's okay. They're the best in the world. That's fine. There was none of that. We wanted to win. And
do you think that's changed? Do you think that the will to win is not there, or do you think it's stronger when you were playing? Is that what you're saying?
I think if you look at the school systems now, a lot of schools, what they're on about now is, we don't want winners. We want you to compete. Everyone's a winner. So you get a certificate from first to last, because you competed. I mean, we never did that. What's wrong with being first, second, or third? That means the person's better than the others. If you look at the Olympic Games the last couple of years, I remember in the 80s, you used to sit there. We used to win every gold medal every time we got to a final. Now we're coming fifth and sixth.
Yeah.
Why is that? What's changed? It's changed because at school we've got to win. I'm helping a rugby team at Hunters Hill, and I spoke to the Colts, the younger guys, on Tuesday night, and I said to the guys, when you're training, you've got to start to put yourself under pressure. You've got to learn that you train well, but in a game there's 15 people in front of you. You've got to learn how to handle that. Anyway, there was a young guy who was giving me a bit of lip, so I told him, I can't tell you what I said to him, but I wasn't impressed. And then I said, have any of you guys been watching that Michael Jordan Netflix? Oh, yeah. I said, mate, how good is that? And they go, oh. I said, listen, if he was here now, he would tell you guys all to go because he wants to win. He's a winner. We've lost that. People look at you and go, why do you want to win all the time? I've got, mate, well, that's in our DNA. Australian used to be sport, but we've lost that because at school, they're not saying, that's fantastic, well done, you are the best. Or we can't say that, because little Johnny over here is not as good and it's not fair. And I've gone, well, that's life. Life has changed. But if you are good at something, it's great, as long as you're humble about it.
Yeah. Mate, talking about winning, it's hard to imagine, and so I'll pose a question to you. you go through a team that wins the Grand Slam, you win the Bledisloe, you win the World Cup. Was there anything in rugby, any mountain that you didn't climb, anything that from a team perspective wasn't achieved during your era?
Not really. The only thing that final I'd lost, which was in 1993, we played the World Cup Sevens in Scotland and we lost to England. That was I've seemed to have forgotten that memory, but I had to remember about it. No, I've tried everything. I realised younger that if I wanted to be a different rugby player, I've got to do different things. And one thing that I made sure, and if you speak to Bob Dwyer or Alan Jones, my preparation was amazing. I made sure I trained. I was probably one of the hardest trainers. I would do extra work. I would make sure for every performance I was prepared.
Yeah.
And my basics were spot on. You know, the basics are very, very important, because if you want to do the extra things, which looks very, very difficult, if under pressure, you know, if you can do the basics, then you can go and try a few things. But if you can't do the simple things, it's very difficult to try the hard things.
Yeah, well, it obviously paid off. In 1991, the World Cup, you voted player of the tournament, leading try scorer of the tournament. There was obviously that was a magnificent period in time for you. Yeah,
look, it was one of those tournaments. Obviously, I played in '87 World Cup as well, which was a disappointment in Australia. We lost to France at Concord Oval, 30-24, I think it was. And he scored. Serge Blanco scored in the last minute of the game. We had a bit of a change after the World Cup. Alan Jones left. Bob Dwyer came back in, and in '89 we had Tim Horan and Jason Little, young guys, came into the game. And we had a lot of experience players and a couple of younger guys, very similar to when I started in '82. But I looking back now, I mean, most of my best rugby was played in Europe or in New Zealand, because in Australia we got that tall poppy syndrome problem. If you want to be different and you make mistakes, well, you're useless, you're Italian, you're this, spaghetti rugby, you're that and that. You know, so my best rugby was always in Europe, because the crowd loved to see something different. And the performances we played in the Grand Slam '84, '88 we were back there again, the World Cup '91, we always played some fantastic rugby. And so '91 was one of those sort of tournaments where things happened. I was relaxed, I was super fit. We had a very good team, and I was on the end of a back line that knew what I could do. I knew what they could do. And we just had a lot of fun, basically. We weren't professional. We were in our attitude. But back in those days, it was 20 quid a day we got paid to play international rugby. Even when the Rugby World Cup, it wasn't about money. It was about being the best in the world. So, yeah, look, I just took every game as it came. I would do the same routine I did for years. I used to read the same poem before a game, which means winners take chances like everyone else. They fear failing. So I used to sit in the dressing room, read a poem. You got forwards smashing their heads against wall, punching each other, wilding themselves in games, and here's a guy reading a poem. But that's how I prepared. I made sure I was prepared, and every game was the same routine. Yeah.
Mate, is that something you think winning a player at the tournament from the position of the wing, is that something that is certainly unique and because of the positional play where you are?
No, I think it's, if you look at that team, if you pick the world's best 15, I think in that year, we had 9 Wallabies in the team. You know, I mean, it was very honoured to be player of the tournament, but I'm one of 15. You know, if they didn't do their job, I couldn't do my job. So I got a dog barks at anything. What happened was I was very, very fortunate that I had Jason Little, Tim Horan, Michael Lyon, Nick Farr-Jones, Willie often ago, we all played for each other. You know, we had a great front row, Kearns, Mackenzie, Daly. You had Eels, McCall. We had a lot of youth experience. So, and we had great combinations. So for me to be on the end of the back line, and I could read the game very well. I knew what the opposition were doing, where the gaps, where the weaknesses were. So, you know, it was a great honour. But as I said, I was one link in the whole system. If they didn't do their jobs, I couldn't do my job. So it was a team effort. You know, obviously they picked someone. I didn't choose it. It was the team effort. Look, just to win the Rugby World Cup was enough satisfaction.
And it's obviously something that your messaging there translates to all that we do in business, isn't it? That you know, when you're sharing those type of messages with corporate, it's the value of the entire team. You know, and if we're only thinking about the glory that comes to the sales team or so forth, you know, they're doing themselves short if they're not recognising the contribution of everyone on the field, off the field, the support staff. It really is. It's a collective effort, isn't it?
It is a collective effort, and you know, for me, back in 1989, we played the British Lions, and I threw a pass to Greg Martin. The British Lions scored, and we lost the Test series, and everyone blamed me. So you're sitting there going, that's the downs. Down there. Okay, so I'll just tell you quickly what happened there. And I went home, and I used to drive a BMW, a white BMW, and my number plate was N011. So instead of going to functions, I spoke to Yane Evans, who I marked. I said, sorry, mate, I've got to go. Drove home, got booked by the police for speeding. It was a great way to go home. I got home. Helen's Rugby League offered me more money to go and play rugby league, which was a bit bizarre. Next day, I ring Bob Dwyer, the national coach. I said, Bob, because the week after it was the Anzac, Australia, New Zealand versus the British Lions. So for some reason, I ring up the national coach and said, Bob, please don't pick me for next week. I don't really feel good. Put the phone down. I've got probably not the best thing to do for my career is tell the national coach not to pick me. So I rang him up. I said, Bob, want to pick me? Pick me. The week after, I did exactly the same pass. It works. So from going from the heights of winning the Rugby World Cup to the lows, what I realised in life, you know, and you wake up the next day after the winning the Rugby World Cup, you wake up and you go, okay, what do we do now? We're the world's best. Life goes on. Then I realised that, you know, the journey starts when you start. The journey's not when you get to the ends. That's not the journey. It's like you're doing now. You know, you're doing this bike. Not, oh, gee, I've finished. I've achieved it. It's from day one. That's when you start. And the other important thing that I found is, yes, I played well against New Zealand. But then there's another game. You can't rely on that performance to get you through the next week. You talked about business. You just put in a proposal. You've made this massive offer and you've won. The next week, that's not going to help. You've got to say, right, you've got to turn up next week and go, this is where we start again. We've got to be on our game. If you don't, you think, oh, well, we've got $1 million deal next week. This one's easy. You're not going to get it. You've got to get week in, week out. And that's the difference from being the top or thinking you're really good, and that's why you don't get to the top.
Yeah. Mate, talking about being at the top, you mentioned a fella who knows a bit about rugby, and he made quoted as saying that you were the Don Bradman of rugby. Alan Jones, the coach of the Wallabies from 84 to 88, the most successful coach that we've had in rugby. Tell me what it was like. He's obviously a very divisive person, you know, not just within rugby, not within the Wallabies, but publicly. You either love him or hate him. What was it like working with Jonesy from 84 to 88?
Yeah, look, when he came in 84, you know, I heard a lot about Alan. Obviously, come from Canberra, I didn't know much about Alan Jones. And we had a trial up at Singleton, and I met him and he says, hi, Alan Jones. I said, he said, mate, I just want you to go out there and play rugby. I said, okay, which is good, you know, because you hear so many things about it from different people. Alan was, I remember in the 84 Grand Slam, there was a couple of he used to give some fantastic speeches before games.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've always remembered, and obviously I'll ask you the question. Do you know what the Gucci factor is?
No, I do not.
Okay, the Gucci factor is, and Alan talked about this, the quality remains well after the price is forgotten. So
Right.
we use sayings, about games. Guys, the performance, the win, it's going to be forgotten. The performance is going to be, no one cares about the score. The performance is going to be remembered. So those sort of things, and digging for diamonds, Nadia Comaneci. Things like, he used to quote all these, and you hear him on radio having all these great quotes. We had a very, very good team, a very good experienced team. Alan really didn't coach the back line. We had Mark Ella, we had Michael Liner, we had Andrew Slack, we had some of the best players in the world. So he looked at the opposition, fantastic at motivating, loved his rugby, knew his rugby. But we had a lot of good talent as well. So, for example, we played Wales, and he kept on saying, which is quite interesting, because when you play a game in sport against anyone, you say, guys, look, that's their weaknesses. Let's attack the weakness. Alan would say, the Welsh strength is their scrum, so let's destroy their scrum. If you destroy their strength, their weakness is weak, And before that game, he said, Eddie Butler, number 8, hasn't played for 3 weeks. So let's exploit the blind. So one of the scrums was Nick Farr-Jones put the ball in. Steve Tyman comes to blind, gives the ball to me. I step a guy, gives it to Simon Poitevin, gives it to Michael Lyon, and we score under the post. Right, that's easy. Okay, so we just did that. He gave us the ideas, or he read what the opposition was, and we played to that. But also we played that could do that, So he was out there. He brought in a guy called Alec Evans because in 84 we had 18 games. So we played Wednesday, Saturday for 18 games. And if you're in November in Europe, there was rain and there was mud and there was rain and mud. And it was totally different, a total different environment to Australia, hard games, playing really well. And so what we learned in every training session was, to keep it simple, stupid. Make sure in the mud, you take the ball in, you hold the ball, your socks come over, you place the ball out. That was what we trained. We had the talents, but we made sure every little simple basic was done properly.
It leads into the next point I wanted to go to. And as a player who achieved all that could be achieved in rugby, as an individual, as a team, an all-conquering team, your observations of other sporting teams, businesses, those you advise, you work with, what drives culture within an organisation, and how do you influence that as a leader in business or sport?
For me, it's, I played for Australia since 1980, so 81 for the 21s. But the game was there well before me. The people during the war, the 1926 Waratahs, who were the Wallaby team because there was no national team. That's where the culture comes from. You've got to look back at the past to go forward. I know the world's a bit strange at the moment, but or, you obviously play for a team, if you look or go and read the history, then you see why Randwick was so good at Randwick rugby, why they were different. You can't just turn up one day and say, oh, I'm going to play here, that's great because I'm here. It's what happened in the past. In teams, you got different cultures, you got different players. You had Willie Offenagao from Tonga, didn't drink. And in sport, there's a lot of, so you've got to be mindful of that as well. You've got to be respectful. And that's why some teams don't really, or business do well, because there are a lot of different things that aren't working. For me, the culture comes from the past. Why do you want to work for this company? Or because they pay me a lot of money? No, I actually like their ethics. I've since I was a kid, I used to see the ads on TV and I got, this is interesting. And now I'm working for them, and I'm so proud. And because of Mark Ella played, or Cyril Towers played for the Wallabies back in the 50s or 30s. You know, he was a great player, and he played a style of rugby that continued on. That's where for me in life, his history is important because, you know, my dad's Italian. I'm not going to change that. He came out to Australia, had no support. My mother's Irish. That's where my heritage comes from. I'm an Australian, but my dad's Italian. I always tell people that. You know, I can't say I'm a fair dinkum Aussie and all that, which I am, but my history and my culture is from other parts in the world. So you've got to embrace that. You've got to be proud of that. And if you're proud of that, like the Kiwis are so proud, they love the haka. You know, that's part of the culture. And when you see their faces, they're so entrenched in it. You know, they're so proud of it. We've got to be proud, you know, and I think there's so many forces these days trying to say, oh, look, you know, don't need to do that and all that. You can't. If you haven't got history, you haven't got culture.
It's one of the you know, the things that we touched on earlier that I wanted to come back to, and it was around these winning teams, you know, like where there is so much available now for people to, you know, there's so many books written, movies produced from ex-players talking about culture. Like you finish as an All Black coach, you write books, you go on the speaking circuit, talk about culture, talk about, you know, cleaning the dressing room, you talk about all of this, you make your coin, and that's, you know, what they do. You look at the Chicago Bulls, the winning time that they had with, you know, we just saw that Last Dance movie. Look at the mighty St. George Dragons that went through 11 premierships. You know, we've got the history there. These days we've got the sports guys, we've got the people. Why do we have teams like the Dragons now that are hurting so much, Campo?
Yeah.
Why? Well, what's missing?
You sound like a St. George supporter, so am I, don't worry. It's tough. Yeah, well, as a kid growing up, I mean, my mum was a St. George supporter. Don't have a go. My mum was a Collingwood supporter, and and the reason was that's her brother's trial for Collingwood. So I grew up, whatever my mum supported, I supported. I used to like, you know, Rocket Rod Reddy. You had Craig Young. Slippery Steve Morris, Teddy Goodwin, the Wynn brothers. I mean, that was...
I've got their footy cards in the bedroom. Do you want me to go and get them?
No, you've got to keep on writing, mate. Sorry, next time. But what happens over time, see, this is interesting. It's a great point because when I go and speak to kids, you know, I came through an amateur era. So we played because we loved it. And, you know, when I go and coach kids, I say, listen, if you ever want to become a professional, please do me a favour. Go because to a club that it's going to make you a better player. Don't go because they're going to pay you more money. Because if you do that, you've actually got the wrong reasons. You know, the way, as I said, because I've been through the amateur, I played a couple of years of professionalism. And I was the last player chosen for New South Wales in 1996 to be a professional. And I said, mate, I don't really care. I'll play for nothing. I just love playing rugby. It didn't change the player. You know, why does it, you know, why do you want to get incentives to win a Rugby World Cup? You're going to get paid more. Mate, to be the best, enough incentive. But that's society. That's what they've created. So I think what's happened is because the people who have gone there don't understand the history. They're getting paid, they're getting checked. That's it. That's what's happened. Yeah. It's about, you know, in rugby, you talked about some of the All Black coaches, and I think it was Graham Henry went over to coach the Lions in South Africa. And he said, as soon as he got there, he went to the library and he wanted to find out the history of the Lions, which is the Hardteng Lions. He wanted to understand why he's coaching. And I thought, well, you know, well done to him because he wanted not to turn up. You know, we've had every country in the world in those days had a different style of playing. And the French were flair, you know, they'd run the ball from their own line. Great, you know, they'd do unbelievable things. The Wallabies, you know, we had a coach called Robbie Deans, who was a Kiwi. Didn't want to understand how we played. He wanted to play his style of rugby. Did not work. We got a new coach, Dave Rennie, who was about to start. You had Darryl Gibson from New South Wales. They all played their style of rugby. Penny, who's the coach, is about Australian rugby, but we have to play like them because they're the coaches. You know, was in 2005, 6 and 7. I married Lara, who's Zimbabwean, lives in South Africa. So I went over there and I coached the Natal Sharks. I was a skills coach, and I went out there and I learned quickly, because I played against the Sharks as well, about their traditions. And I brought in a style of rugby, do the simple things, and then guys, you do what you guys want to do best, but here's the simple skills. You've got to understand that. You can't go in there, because over there you've got Zulu, you've got Xhosa, you've got about 10 different languages, and you've got to understand that they've got a different culture to Australian culture. So you've got to learn and understand and help those guys. So culture it comes from the history. Anyone who plays in St. George, mate, here, go and read this book, Why Are You Playing for St. George? They don't do that. Here's your check, mate, thanks very much. They don't play for the history or the jersey. They're playing because they're getting paid. That's professionalism, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and it's not something you'll mind back, is it? It's people talk about the good old days, and it's a generational thing, and no one's playing sport for at those levels anymore without the importance of the dollar. And it's their livelihood, it's what they do, it's their profession, it's their career, it can be a short-term a gig if there's a serious injury or so forth, and that's where we are. And I guess, to finish up, Camp, I wanted to just, what are you doing now with the kids and with the camps that you're running, and how can people find out more around what you do? And if they've got aspiring wallabies at home, how can they share and bathe in some of the wisdom?
Yeah, look, I've been back in Australia for 2.5 years. Decided to do some coaching. Decided to join Rugby Australia, because with their endorsement, you can go a lot more places. Been right around Australia 2 or 3 times. I was very disappointed that no one really wanted to know what the problems were at grassroots. This is one of our problems. The problems are a lot of kids aren't watching the game because they can't get access to the game. They've got no idols. I think you still need an idol to want to be like somebody. And then I realised you can be a coach, I can be a coach, anyone can coach. So I did realise that mentoring is probably the better thing to do. So I do a lot of mentoring on and off the field. My knowledge, as you said, I've played 15 years for Australia, lived in Italy for 10 years, playing in South Africa, travelled the world, met people, different cultures, understanding. So my knowledge, what I can bring to a young player that wants to go to that next level, off the field as well, because obviously being in front of the press, being abused by the press, being praised by the press, I can guide people, and I think that it's very, very easy to get caught up not knowing what to do. So with my knowledge, I can guide, even in business, because sport and business is exactly the same. You are one in a team. You've got to be a team if you want to be successful. You can't want to be an individual in a team sport. It really is very, very tough, especially when they're on different wavelength. Quade Cooper's a great example. He wants to be a flair. If you want to be a flair, you've got to give the flair options. You can't wait for the flair to do something. So but the mentoring is the way to go. I've got a young guy called Blaze Barnes from Randwick. Great schoolboy rugby player, went to rugby leagues, come back, had a few injuries, and I've been helping him on and off the field for probably about 13, 14 weeks now. So there's a guy in Japan that's come on board. You've got Samoa Rugby Academy. Rugby is such a great sport, and you can go anywhere in the world. But my knowledge, insights, and obviously experience to help these young. Because if you think about our day, we didn't have a lot of mentors. We had TV. Then you go out and practice. We didn't have personal trainers. Now there's so much available. You really want to go the right way. And me being there, done that, 101 caps, 64 tries, 15 years. You can't go past my experience or knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely, Campo. And it's a nice point to put the full stop in the conversation. The final question is, rugby's obviously not in the best of places right now, and part of that comes with winning and culture and a time to settle and give people a chance. And across all codes, who'd want to be a coach with unless you're winning. You've got the board, the supporters, the CEO, the players out for your blood. But you know, whether rugby suffered from, you know, not having that free-to-air TV deal years ago, whether it, you know, whatever the causes are, is there enough that you see now that excites you for the future of rugby?
I think there's a few more hard foughs we've got to go through before we get there. I just find it strange that, you know, for the last probably 10, 15 years, especially in rugby, there's been no knowledge put back in. I showed Lara, my wife, doesn't know a lot about rugby league, but last year in the paper, and I said in the back of this train, I said, have a look at this. She said, what am I looking at? I said, there's Ponga, the young Newcastle player who's playing for Queensland State of Origin, being coached by Slater, who just retired, you know, and they brought him back in. But in rugby, mate, thanks very much, we don't want you.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Now you can see there's a lot of players in positions that haven't had the knowledge. You know, you go through, you know, as I said, I was lucky. I was 19. I sat there. I had some great players. I'd sit there and watch. Club rugby is the academy. The club rugby team, we used to play a test match on a Saturday, go and play club rugby on a Sunday. On Tuesday night, you'd be up to play against your Blacks on Saturday. You're playing club rugby and that was it. So all teach them, you coach them. Chris Latham was one of them, who played at Randwick, and he came through the system, and he was playing with us. When you do the good things and bad things, you had someone there say, mate, that's great. Next time, try this, and you'd learn. Now a kid tries something, goes, oh, well, that must be all right because no one's teaching me. But there's none of that. For some reason, because we've got an opinion. Yeah. We say, and we've been that, and we're winners. I want to win, you know, and it's very, very important to understand that. So, so it was, you know, we've just got to get there and make sure that for the next generation, they understand the culture, get the culture back, and we'll start winning.
Mate, can we end this conversation on a high? Can you tell me that Lara is a St George supporter?
Lara, are you a St George supporter? Definitely not. Sorry.
Hey.
Balmain Tigers all the way. Gee, that's a tough one, eh?
Oh.
But they're winning.
I don't know.
Right, so sorry.
No, that's all right, mate. It's seriously, and I don't say this just as words without meaning. It's been a real privilege to have a chat to you, Campo, and really appreciate you giving up your time to share with us today. I absolutely love the chance to hear your wisdom, and as I said, I understand why it translates across business and corporate, and it makes sense that people would have you as part of their organisation, talking to them about culture and history. And so I'm going to hand back to Emma to wrap this up, the fanatical All Black supporter. But thanks again, Campo. It's been an amazing chat. I've loved spending the time.
Mate, I must say I'm very impressed that you can ride and talk, and looks like you've done nothing, but that's fantastic.
There's a pool on the ground.
Oh, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Over to you, Em.
Thanks, guys. I am not going to lie. It has been my favorite interview of the series. So many great stories and really amazing wisdom. And thank you so much for your time, David. I second what Pete said. It was super enjoyable to hear you chat with us and be part of our virtual challenge. So guys, you've completed another 25 kilometers. We do not have long to go, 4 days until we finish this up, and all of you have done such an amazing job. Remember to log on and log your Ks, and also all of our past interviews are on the YouTube channel, so make sure if you've got any Ks to make up, you jump on there and you can watch those. Tomorrow morning we are joined by Michael Hull, who is an ultra marathon runner and epic adventurer, so we're looking forward to that. And tomorrow afternoon I will be doing a live cross to 2 of our homes in Thailand, and the kids have been busily preparing everything you can imagine for those live cross. They're so excited, and there'll be lots of performances, so please join us tomorrow for that. But for now, thank you everybody. Thanks David, thanks Pete, and we'll chat to you soon.
Thank you very much.
All the best. See you guys. Buddy Cup. See you.